The medical bag was a gift from my parents, a gesture of how proud they were of my acceptance into medical school. Vietnamese parents are easy to please. They want only two things: a hair salon and a physician in the family. The bag contained a stethoscope, an ophthalmoscope, and a sphygmomanometer. On the eve of a flight to Vermont to begin medical school, I buried it between a keyboard and a pair of long johns. Lost in the excitement were the early warning signs. That little voice in my head asking obvious questions, like, what's a sphygmomanometer? How do you spell ophthalmoscope? And where the hell is Vermont? Isn't Vermont a province in Canada where liberals go to ski, smoke weed, and worship upon the altar of Bernie Sanders? While the medical bag didn't take up much space in my luggage, it occupied a large rent-free space in my head. The reality of 4 years of medical school sunk in like the Titanic. What should have been a journey to fulfill a lifelong dream was marred by a fog of insecurities. I came down with an acute case of imposter syndrome. How did someone like me get into medical school? Who in their right mind reviewed the application and thought I was fit to one day take care of grandma, or join the front lines in a battle against cancer and heart disease? I couldn't be trusted not to push the snooze button 3 times and oversleep for a class at 10. Even my career counselor in college said, "Have you ever considered dental school?" The only job I could find after graduation was at 7-Eleven, ringing up Marlboro Lights and Hustler magazines. It took 6 years, 2 MCATs, and a Costco-sized bottle of self-loathing to get into medical school. When I received the acceptance letter from the University of Vermont, I called the admissions office to confirm my acceptance. The woman said, "Yeah, you were on the bottom of the wait list. We've never in our history had to dip that low before. The school has been around since 1822. 2 scores and 1 year before Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation." More than anything else, I feared that I wouldn't measure up to the other medical students, the ones who graduated magna cum laude from Harvard, the ones whose parents are doctors, the ones who already talked like doctors. I was comforted by the idea that med school is kind of like boot camp, where even a softie like me could be turned into a chiseled killing machine. Now that metaphor sounds awful until you realize that medical students know just enough to be dangerous. So how many people was I going to kill before I could save anyone? My flight arrived on the Friday before new student orientation. I rented an apartment sight unseen for $300 a month. When the taxi dropped me off in front of the Jewish Chabad, I double-checked the street address to ensure it wasn't a mistake. I was pretty sure I wasn't Jewish. I have scars from Sunday Catholic school to prove it. When I knocked on the door, the rabbi greeted me and led me up 3 flights of stairs. When I reached the landing, I was literally out of breath. Not because I was out of shape, but because I was hit with a cloud of cannabis smoke. It escaped from under the door of one of the tenants. The rabbi sensed my trepidation and said, "Oh, that's Robbie, don't mind him. He knows to stay out of your way." Who is this Robbie? Why was he instructed to stay out of my way? Is he some Jewish pot-smoking version of Quasimodo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame? The rabbi showed me the bathroom shared with the other tenants on the floor and led me to my room. It was the size of a walk-in closet, but it had a twin bed and a desk. For someone expecting to only study, sleep, and subsist on top ramen for 4 years, I found the arrangement a perfect blend of minimalism and monasticism. He said, "There's a kitchen downstairs you can use, but it's off limits on Saturdays. No electricity on Saturdays." Now, I appreciate all religions, but I'm suspicious of the ones who believe in electricity only 6 days out of the week. When the rabbi left, I unpacked. Before the long johns were put away, there was a knock on the door. He introduced himself as Kyle. Beyond the fact that he was also an entering first-year med student, we couldn't have been more different. He had sandy blonde hair, played linebacker in college, and had a jaw so square, you'd mistake it for an Amazon box. Our conversation was interrupted by moans and the banging of bedposts against my wall. It was the unmistakable sound of lovers enjoying some afternoon delight. Kyle grinned and said, "Oh, that's Manny and his girlfriend. They're both second-year med students." I was led to believe that med school demanded all of my time and required a purging of fun, like drinking a gallon of Go Lightly to prep for a colonoscopy. So how was there time to fuck on a Friday afternoon? Orientation weekend was a chance to meet all of my classmates. They were from all around the country. Only a few graduated from Harvard. The ones who did tried really hard to hide that they went to Harvard. The most iconic medical school course is anatomy lab. It took an abstraction of what a doctor is and made it more real. When you sink a scalpel into human skin that very first time, it's one of those aha moments where you realize, oh snap, the thigh bone is connected to the knee bone. The lab had 2 rows of metal tables upon which cadavers lay for dissection. 10 dead bodies wrapped in plastic and formaldehyde. When we entered the lab that first time, no one spoke. Our silence was a testament to the reverence we held for 10 dead people who had volunteered to be our teachers. A month into medical school, our professor interrupted lab and stood on a chair. We knew something was wrong because his eyes bordered on tears. He said, "There was a terrorist attack. 2 planes crashed into 2 buildings in New York City. My classmates and I were isolated in a quiet little town in Burlington, Vermont. We went to class together, studied together, ate together, and some of us even slept together. When the outside world tapped on our blissfully ignorant shoulders and pointed to 2 skyscrapers and thousands dead, our trivialities were brought into stark relief. My classmates fled the room to call family and friends, or to huddle around a TV, or to cry. Class was canceled, but I remained in the lab. My cadaver lay before me, her chest partially splayed open, her heart pale and still. She was delivered to our lab with a little white card that read, 76-year-old female, died from lung cancer. We had cut into her skin and peeled back layers of fat and fascia, identifying bones, muscles, and ligaments. We uncovered masses in her lungs and liver, an aneurysm in her aorta that would have ruptured and killed her had the cancer not gotten there first. It seemed sacrilegious to open a person and touch the smooth surface of her heart without knowing so much as her name. We called her Ethel. And in the tedium of hours dissecting through a sinewy web of blood vessels and nerves whose function may be to cause the skin to prickle or the heart to race, we wondered about her life. She may have been CEO of a large cow milking conglomerate. She may have even married and had 2 kids. She may have sold the dairy farms to 2 guys named Ben and Jerry and traveled the world and discovered a love of French wine, Middle Eastern food, and Virginia Slims. But Ethel definitely had a friend named Lucy. When the lab was empty, I picked up the scalpel and finished opening her chest. Arteries and veins spread out before me like roads on a map. She spoke to me, the only way the dead know how to speak. Her teachings etched into my brain like the images of 2 planes and 2 skyscrapers. I thought about the doctors tasked with caring for the injured 9/11 victims, and if someday I could do the same. It wasn't lost on me that the journey to learn how to prolong human life starts in a lab with 10 dead people, and how it takes a tragedy and the loss of nearly 3,000 lives to make you appreciate the finitude of life. Time is all we have, and even that is not guaranteed. If we are defined by what we do with that time, then medical school is less about belonging and all about commitment. A commitment to devote time to unravel a complex network of arteries, nerves, and veins. And Ethel provided the roadmap to get there. Our first anatomy exam was a week after 9/11. My anxiety curdled like sour milk, thick enough to cut with a scalpel. With each question, my confidence grew. I found out a week later that out of 100 questions, I answered them all correctly. I didn't get everything right. Pot-smoking Robbie wasn't the Hunchback of Notre Dame. He was your basic drug dealer who ran his operation out of a Jewish Chabad. Medical school wasn't the insurmountable obstacle I had created in my head. It was the best 4 years of my life, in large part due to the relationships I developed. My roommate Kyle, with whom I had very little in common, became one of my best friends. He was a Cubs fan. I was a Padres fan. We bonded over a shared love of perennial losers. My classmates had imposter syndrome too. The ones who didn't are probably the same doctors roaming hospital hallways pretending like their BMs don't stink. Much is written about imposter syndrome, but few recognize that it's an affliction of the privileged. When I was working the graveyard shift at 7-Eleven, it was difficult to see a future beyond packs of Newports and Coors Light. A career as a physician was a pipe dream, and dispensing Playboy magazines seemed to be the only way I was capable of providing comfort for the suffering. Imposter syndrome wasn't even on the radar. It was only a problem after my acceptance into medical school. At the end of an anatomy course, we held a private ceremony to honor people like Ethel who donate their bodies to science, an evening to reflect on how lucky and privileged we all were. We gathered on a green lawn, surrounded by aspens and maples, candles lit against a dark crimson sky, words of gratitude etched on a granite bench. Sometimes, our best teachers are the ones who are dead. The medical bag is buried under a pile of junk in my closet. The last time I saw a physician carry one was Doc Baker from Little House on the Prairie. Like imposter syndrome, the medical bag is a relic from my past. The insecurities are mostly in the rearview mirror. I navigate the healthcare highway with confidence and respect for the challenges ahead. The roads are treacherous and paved with cancer and heart disease. The streets are lined with cannabis and flowers of the poppy. When the weather turns cloudy with a chance of crystal meth, I am thankful for the 4 years of medical school which prepared me for the storms ahead. Rest assured, no matter the crisis, the roads I travel are never out of network.
Give it up for Jay.